fabricated because this case... Oh!
I'm sorry, I was trying to...
Oh, it's okay, just cough.
I was trying to, like, hide my burp.
I was like, is she projectile vomiting?
No.
We're gonna change the entire YouTube intro genre. We're gonna make a new genre. Hi.
Welcome back. Or just welcome.
Or welcome.
Today, my name is Kathy. Today, Celeste is going to be telling us a story. I haven't heard it yet, so I'll be hearing it along with you. So get ready.
It's gonna be a wild ride. So many plot twists.
Oh my god, I'm ready.
And if you're feeling a little frisky, maybe do your makeup with us.
Do it with us.
So before I begin today, I just want to say that this case is very controversial. There's a lot of information about this case, and some of the information that I have in this story today might be fabricated because this case was on national news.
Wow.
It was all over the place. So I tried to gather as much accurate information as I could, but I'll be linking all of the sources below. And if you guys have any corrections, feel free to correct me, but this is just what I found. So, And I also want to quickly apologize because for the last few videos, Kathy and I haven't been putting trigger warnings on our videos.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But we are going to make sure to put a trigger warning for every single video and then put content warnings in our description. Today, we're going to get into the crazy case of Pamela Smart. Have you ever heard of Pamela Smart?
Pamela Smart, no.
I didn't either. In December of 1986 in Derry, New Hampshire, Pamela Wojcik, she was home from college for Christmas break, and she went to a family friend Christmas party, and she was there with a bunch of her friends. A lot of them were like hard rocker type people, like 80s hard rocker people.
Oh.
And she went to this party and she met this guy, Greg Smart. When she bumped into him, she was like, oh my gosh, he's gorgeous. He was really cheeky, very smiley. She was instantly attracted to his energy because he had the stereotypical rocker aesthetic. He was really friendly, really talkative and outgoing. From that point on, they were like attached at the hip.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Her friends said that they were very well suited.
Wow.
They were super happy. And here's a picture of Pamela Smart and Greg Smart.
Oh, cute.
Pamela Wojcik at the time. He was super outgoing despite his heavy metal aesthetic. You know, he was just a huge softie at heart. Like I said, he was very outgoing. He loved the party life and he came from a great home.
Oh, nice.
So he was like a party boy, but he had a great relationship with his parents.
Okay, so like a wholesome party boy.
Yeah, and he was never like a really outstanding student, but he was just a good kid in general.
Yeah.
Whereas Pam was a bit of an overachiever. She loved her studies. She was born and raised in Miami, Florida. Her father was an airline pilot and her mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she always had a great relationship with her mother and her father. She just said that her mom was always there for her. She was super close to her family, like Greg was.
Yeah. They had that in common. They were both family people.
Yeah. And once they met at this Christmas party, like I said, they hit it off, but Pam had to go back to school in Florida. She went back to school and he ended up deciding to move there for her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they tried the whole long distance thing, but it didn't really work because they would talk on the phone all the time, but they just wanted to be close to each other.
Aww.
They were like in love with each other, yeah.
Oh my god.
So he moved there for her. He wanted a change in general. Like I said, Pam was born and raised in Miami, Florida, and then she moved to New Hampshire when she was in 8th grade. She was always an outstanding student. She was a part of the student body council. She was also the student class president and she was a cheerleader, so she was very active in school. Like I said, Pam went to Florida State University. She worked 3 jobs while she was in school.
Oh, wow.
So she worked 52 hours a week.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's so much.
Yeah.
While going to school. That's insane.
Yeah, which is like, obviously, I feel like that shows you that she was a very hard worker, you know?
Yeah. I couldn't do that.
And she was also a DJ on the school's radio.
Oh.
The school's radio station at Florida State University. And she had a heavy metal show on the radio.
Whoa.
Yeah, and she was referred to as the Maiden of Metal because she was like really into it. She had a regular show and then she had her heavy metal show. So she would just like she was like cool the DJ host. Yeah.
Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah. And she was a huge fan of Van Halen. Like I said, all her friends and everybody she like hung out with, they were all like hard rocker, heavy metal people, you know.
Ooh, love that.
She graduated early from college.
Oh wow.
She was so freaking smart.
Wow.
Yeah, and Greg gave her a Shih Tzu puppy when she graduated from college, and she named the puppy Halen, like Van Halen, the heavy metal band.
Oh my god, that's so cute.
Yeah, and here's a picture of the Shih Tzu, Halen.
Oh my god.
So she was completely in love with Greg. Like I said, he moved to Florida for her. Pam graduated from Florida State in 1988.
Okay.
So at this point, her and Greg had been together for 2 years. And that's when they decided to move back to New Hampshire, Derry, New Hampshire, to be with their families.
Okay.
When they got there, she found a job at Winnacunnet High School as the media director. Like she was kind of like for us, it would have been like I don't know, maybe like the computer department or something.
Oh, okay.
But she wasn't a teacher. She basically just helped with writing school press releases, doing short videos, and then teaching the kids how to use the audio and video equipment. But she wasn't a teacher. She just worked at the high school.
Oh, okay.
When they were back and she got this job, Greg started to change quite a bit. For example, he cut off his hair. He was more preppy. He still listened to heavy metal music, but he just, like, his aesthetic started to change. And that's when he started working at like an insurance agency where his dad worked.
Oh, okay.
So despite his appearance and lifestyle change, on May 7th of 1989, 21-year-old Pam and 23-year-old Greg got married. According to friends and family, the wedding was really beautiful. They were both super happy. They were talking about kids. They were talking about getting a house. Here's a picture of them on their wedding day.
Oh my god, they're so cute.
And I feel like you can tell just by looking at their faces that they're so happy, you know?
Yeah, they look really happy in that.
And this is where things kind of start getting a little crazy. Jump to the future, just a week shy of their 1-year wedding anniversary. Tuesday, May 1st, 1990, just after 10 p.m., Derry police received multiple calls saying that there's a woman running around crazy in the neighborhood being like, please help me. And she's like knocking on doors and she's just screaming and being all intense. Running around saying that her husband passed out.
Oh, shoot.
And she's running from door to door, knocking and banging on doors and being like, help me, please.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and so police entered the condo with now 22-year-old Pam Smart. Pam is urging them to get Greg medical attention. She's like screaming at them. She's like, help him. Like, there's something wrong with him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And she's freaking out, obviously. I mean, it's like, who wouldn't?
I would be, yeah.
Yeah. And the good thing is that the police arrived really quickly, and Greg's family actually arrived shortly after that because they lived super close. And she heard officers say he's dead.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's when all of a sudden it sets in. And she didn't think that he was dead. When she walked in, she thought that he was passed out or knocked out or something. She thought he got hit with something, but she didn't think that he was dead. And she was completely shocked, according to her.
Wow.
An hour after Greg's body is found, a homicide detective is appointed, which isn't completely out of the ordinary because Derry was a really small town. So they start looking around and they can see that the house is completely ransacked. There's stuff all over the place. There's a stereo that's been completely like upended.
Wow.
There's a bunch of jewelry that's missing.
Ooh.
But they also notice that there's no signs of forced entry. So the back door is cracked open.
Oh, it's cracked open?
Yeah, it's open like a crack, like this much.
Oh.
And then they have one of those like cellar doors. You know how it's like double doors that are
that open like this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And those are completely unlocked. And so the cops are like, it's a little weird. If you live in a place where crime doesn't happen, is it really that out of the ordinary to leave your door unlocked? You know?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. So the detectives, they're like, what are we gonna do? It looks like this place was robbed. And they start talking to the neighbors and asking the neighbors questions. They're like, hey, do you know anything? And the neighbors say that Pam and Greg have a lot of parties. And so the cops are like, okay, maybe it's drug related, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe Greg was a drug dealer. I don't know. Let's go check it out. So they're looking in the house. They're looking all around. They search his truck. The only thing that they find is what they referred to as a marijuana cigarette. So they're like, okay, clearly he's not hiding pounds of cocaine or anything crazy like that. It's probably not a drug-related crime.
That's freaking crazy that he got murdered.
I know. It feels so out of the blue, doesn't it?
It really does.
Around 1 a.m., Pam's friends start asking the police to talk to Pam because they're not talking to her, and Pam is getting frustrated. The cops are like, all right, we'll talk to you. So they take her into the station for questioning, and they start asking her about her day. She says that it was not a normal day for her. She actually had a work meeting that ran super late. She didn't get home until like 10 or 10:30.
Oh, wow.
But
PM?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
She called Greg that day around 3 p.m. and she was like, hey, babe, I have a meeting. I'm not going to be home until super late. You know, just want to let you know, love you. And that was the last time that she talked to Greg. So she got home around 10:30 that night, and the first thing that she noticed was that all of the lights were off, which was odd because Greg would leave the outside light on for her. And so when she would get home, the light was usually on. She gets to the front door and it's open. It's not even shut and it's not locked. So she immediately is like, what the heck?
Oh,
she opens the door, and before she even sees Greg, she sees the house behind him completely trashed.
Oh my god.
And again, all the lights are off. She looks down, she sees Greg, and he's passed out. She didn't see any blood right away, so she just assumed that he was unconscious. That's when she runs to get help.
That's when she runs and calls 911.
Yeah, she didn't run and call 911 because she would have had to run inside the house to get the phone. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, I probably wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, because you don't know what happened. You don't know if you're running into the intruder.
Exactly. And it's like, what if it's more than one person, you know? Like,
yeah.
She doesn't know. So she's scared. She runs to the neighbor's house and starts pounding on all these doors to see if she can get help. So the cops ask her if Greg has any money problems because, again, they're kind of like relating this to like drug problems. She says no. Everything she's saying is immediately pointing to a robbery gone wrong. After looking around the crime scene, they see that Greg still has his gold wedding band on his finger.
Oh.
And his wallet, his like right by his leg.
Wow.
So if this was a robbery, why didn't they take those items?
Yeah.
It's a little strange, right?
It's a little weird.
They also find that Greg didn't die of blunt force trauma like they initially thought he did. He was actually shot in the head.
Oh.
There just wasn't a whole lot of blood, but he was shot in the head. The medical examiner retrieved a medium-sized caliber bullet from the inside of Greg's head, so it didn't go all the way through, and maybe that's why there wasn't as much blood, but they found a bullet inside his head. So police conduct an investigation. They're looking everywhere. People are saying that Greg had money problems, that he was a gambler, that he might have debt. So the cops go to Atlantic City, which is in New Hampshire. It's like a gambling place. I'm assuming maybe it's like a mini Las Vegas vibes.
Oh, okay.
But they go there to see if he has any debt, like outstanding debt there. And when they get there, they don't find anything. It's a dead end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
he's not a gambler.
So he's a gambler, but he doesn't have debt that they know of.
Okay.
And on May 4th, 3 days after Greg's murder, Greg is laid to rest. He has a funeral service, and Pam was absolutely hysterical, as you can imagine, during the funeral. Like, literally, her mom and her sister are holding her up.
Oh.
And she's just, there's footage of this, and she's literally crying. You can see she's just devastated. And her best friend Sonia was at the funeral, and her best friend even said that Pam was like laying over his casket, just like crying and like holding on to it, and they had to like kind of get her to come off of it because she was just crying. And even her mom and her dad and her sister look hysterical. Like, even they are crying. Like,
being in love and then having your person just be murdered like that, and then you having to live still, that's so sad.
Pam was going through a lot of mental health issues. She was experiencing extreme mania and depression, and she was just going through it. And her mom actually tried to check her into a mental health facility, but the two of them decided maybe not right now.
Her and Pam decided together that she didn't want to?
Yeah.
Oh.
And her mom has always said that she regrets not checking Pam in, and you'll see why.
Oh, frick.
Yeah. At this point, the media is going crazy. Local media is saying that Greg is a drug dealer, that he has ties to the mafia, has ties to drugs, and he was like doing all this shady stuff.
Why? Because he liked metal music?
I don't think it had anything to do with him liking metal music. I think because it was such a small town and things like that never happened, they just blew it completely out of proportion, maybe.
Okay.
Bill Spencer, this guy, he was a reporter at the time, and he says that, even now, he says that his boss was just hounding him about this case. He was constantly like, where are you going with the Pamela Smart case? What are you going to say about it today? Da-da-da-da-da. Like, have you spoken to Pam? Like, are you going to call her? Like, da-da-da. Like, just being really intense. And also, remember, she's going through this trauma. She's probably not easy to get a hold of.
No.
Bill Spencer, he said that Pam called him and she was like, hey, you're the only one that's not reporting all of these outlandish rumors. You're the only one who's being honest. Can I talk to you for an interview? You're the only person that I trust for an interview.
Oh, wow.
Right? Well, Pam has a completely different version of this event where he said that she was like, you're the only person I trust. She said that he was harassing her and her family.
Oh.
He was calling her every single day, and he was calling her family, and he was being like, hey, I really want to clear Greg's name, but I keep hearing all these rumors that I keep digging up, and da-da-da-da-da. Like, he was being really intense. According to her, she was like, all right, whatever, I'll talk to you, but I just want to clear Greg's name. So she agreed to speak with him after his harassment. And she wanted to go and just clear all of this up. And at the same time, the police were asking her to not speak to any of the media. Or if she did, to not let any of the information about the case get out, you know?
Yeah.
Well, that's what the opposite of what she did, so. I didn't know this, but it's part of tradition after you get married. On your wedding, you have your wedding cake. Save a piece or the top layer of your cake till your first anniversary, and then you eat it.
Oh. All right.
But Bill Spencer goes to her house to interview her. And according to him, she takes the wedding cake out of the freezer. And she's like, wouldn't it be amazing if you got a shot of me with the wedding cake? I can just tell you about me and Greg's 1-year anniversary and da-da-da-da-da. Like I said, a lot of parts of this case could be fabricated. So I don't know for sure what is the truth and what isn't. But apparently that's what she did. And apparently it was all her idea to do that. And Bill Spencer said that when she did that, he was surprised because she was acting less like a victim and more like a reporter. It was very strange that that's what she did. And she was all dressed up. Like, she had a beautiful dress on. Her makeup was completely done. Her hair looked amazing. And she sat down with this interview and she didn't cry. One of the things that she said was, a year ago, I woke up on the happiest day of my life. And now I have to wake up and know that there is no longer a future for us. There's a future for me, but there's not a future for us. She says that. There's tears in her eyes. It looks like, to me at least, it looks like she has tears in her eyes, but she's not actually crying.
I do want to mention that a lot of people process emotions differently, and somebody not crying immediately at a story like that doesn't necessarily mean they're guilty. I don't know where we're going with this story yet, but I do want to mention that, you know.
Absolutely. And that's honestly, that's where I was about to go next. Is I feel like people deal with trauma differently, and also there are several reasons why somebody might not cry.
Yeah.
Did you know if you get depressed enough, sometimes you literally physically cannot cry?
Oh, I didn't know that.
And like I said, Pam was very depressed and she was manic. And some people with disabilities can't cry. So it's it's not completely out of the ordinary for somebody to not be able to cry, you know? It's pretty normal, actually.
Yeah.
So Pam started speaking with several different media outlets, even though the cops asked her not to. And the general public didn't like this because, according to them and the police, from what I found doing my research, is that people did not like her interviews. People said that she was being very self-centered, that it was mostly about her moving on rather than like finding Greg's killer, and that she was like just talking about herself the whole time. But I didn't find this to be true. I found a newspaper clipping here, and here's a picture of it.
Oh.
And it says right here in the bottom corner, in the midst of the investigation, Pamela is asking anyone who noticed anything unusual on the night of May 1st to contact the police, no matter how insignificant it may seem. It's unbelievable that nobody saw anything, she says. What's driving me crazy, was it one person? Was it two? Did they leave in a car? Did they run? Did they walk? And one neighbor saw Greg pull up and walk into the house. It's amazing enough that it happened. It's even more amazing that no one heard. So it sounds to me right there like she wasn't just talking about herself, and that she did want somebody to come forward and say something.
Yeah.
I think that's important to include. In one of the interviews, Pam talks about how this may have been a robbery, and the police really didn't like that because, like I said, they didn't want her to talk to the media. They didn't want her giving out information about the investigation. So guess what happens? They shut her out of the investigation completely. Oh. They refuse to give her any more information. They'll take information from her, but they will not give her any more information about the case. So she says that she spoke about the case openly because she never felt like she had anything to hide, you know? Like she was just trying to figure out what was going on, you know?
Yeah.
2 weeks after the murder of Greg Smart, police receive an anonymous phone call. And it's from this woman who works at a local Italian restaurant. And she's like, hey guys, there's this 15-year-old girl and she works with me. And she's been talking all about how this woman planned to have her husband murdered.
What?
There's a lot of names in this case. A lot of names, so I'm going to do my best to show who I'm talking about as I go. Okay. This is the 15-year-old, and her name is Cecilia Pierce.
Okay. The one that was, like, talking about this lady that was trying to get her husband killed.
Right.
Okay.
And she works at this Italian restaurant.
Okay.
Detectives realize that the name Cecilia Pierce rings a bell. It actually turns out that Cecilia Pierce was a friend of Pam's. But Pam is 22 years old. This kid is 15 years old. How do they know each other? They know each other from Winnicott High School.
Oh.
They would hang out. The police are like, all right, this name rings a bell. Maybe we should look more into this, you know?
Yeah.
Cecilia met Pam in 1989 when she went into the media center and she ended up being an intern for Pam.
Uh-huh.
It was said that Cecilia was a bit of an outsider. So when she met Pam, she was kind of taken with her because Pam is beautiful. She has this amazing job. She has a degree. She has a husband. So Cecilia was taken with her, and Pam was really nice to Cecilia. She made Cecilia feel really validated, and I think that's important for a teenager to feel seen by somebody who's older.
100%.
And Cecilia said that Pam made her feel important. On top of that, Pam would always take Cecilia out to go eat, go shopping.
Oh.
She would even let Cecilia drive her car. Like, she would pay for everything. Yeah, which I was like, that's literally so weird.
Yeah.
As a 22-year-old, that's so weird.
Yeah.
But as a teenager, that would seem really cool.
Yeah,
you know?
You would be like, oh my god, this is like my dream big sister kind of thing.
Exactly. From the beginning, Cecilia's mom didn't like it because she noticed that the second that Cecilia started hanging out with Pam, her grades started going down.
Oh.
And she was coming home less. And so her mom went to the school and she was like, hey, this is weird. Why are you letting an adult hang out with my 15-year-old child?
Yeah.
And the school was like, yeah, that's weird. But they didn't do anything about it.
That's weird. This really wasn't that long ago, like in the 80s, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. The cops go to meet Cecilia. They go to her house and her parents are there, and the police begin questioning her about this strange phone call. Cecilia immediately says that she has no idea what they're talking about. She didn't even say that. Like, da-da-da-da-da. They keep probing her, and that's when Cecilia finally says that she did stay at Pam's condo for a week, an entire week before the murder happened.
Whoa.
And the cops thought this was really strange because they knew that Pam was friends with Cecilia, but they asked Pam the last couple weeks if anybody stayed at her house because they were gonna look for fingerprints and stuff like that. They needed to know who was at her house. Pam made an entire list of people that were at her house. She even included the person who dropped off water, like filtered filtered drinking water at her house, but she didn't say anything about Cecilia. So it's like she's intentionally hiding it. Why? You know? So the cops are like, that's really weird.
Yeah, that's weird.
And the fact that she's 15.
Do you think she hid it because Cecilia was 15? Or I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I'll see.
Okay. Okay.
They start thinking back and they think more about Pam's behavior and how to them it seems like during the interviews and when they've spoken to her, she doesn't show any emotion. Like she seems void of emotion, according to them. That it seemed more important to her that she explained where she was and that she had answers rather than questions. The police are like, you know, you're acting weird, and on top of that, it seems like you're hiding things, at least that Cecilia was at your house. So they find it really suspicious, and they also think it's odd that she didn't check on Greg at all. Like she didn't check on his body to see if he was alive. She didn't go up and check his pulse. Like she just, according to them, looked at him and ran away, you know? They think that's strange, so they're like, you know what, we're gonna look into this a little more. She's a little suspicious. On the other hand, as I said before, Pam was going through a bit of a mental health crisis. So I feel like she was not in a super great state of mind. And on top of that, like she was trying to get information about the case and they blocked her out completely. She felt really irritated by the fact that like her husband got murdered and she couldn't get any information about it, you know?
Yeah, she's having this mental break, and also the police are shutting her out.
On June 6th, almost a month later, Pam invites this guy over again. Bill Spencer. And she invites him over for another interview, even though, again, the police asked her not to talk to the media. She had actually moved to a new condo, which I feel a little conflicted about that because I don't think it would be too weird to not want to be where your husband was murdered.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think it's a little strange that she didn't go to like a family member's house or a friend's house. She just bought a new condo.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
Especially,
maybe she just wanted her own space, though.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and at the same time, I was like, especially if her husband was murdered, wouldn't she want to be near people in case the people came back for her, you know?
That's a good point. It's hard to say in cases like this because we've never been in that situation, and also we're not done with the whole story, so I don't know all the information, but there's different sides of everything.
Yeah. But yeah, so she's speaking to Bill Spencer. She addresses the ongoing investigation again, even though she was asked not to. And she basically just said that several of the leads were dead ends, which I'm like, that doesn't seem like she's leaking too much important information. And with that, police conclude that Pam is a suspect now because they find her behavior very distasteful and they think that it's really annoying that she keeps saying stuff about the case. So there's nothing that solidifies Pam's involvement at all until June 10th. Just a few days after her second interview with Bill Spencer. A man walks into the police department. He's like, hey, I have something to show you guys. His name is Vance Latamy, and he says that his... What'd she say?
She's saying something, you dumb...
He says that a friend of his son named Ralph Welch came to him and said, I think your gun may have been used to kill that guy in Derry. This is Ralph.
Okay.
Mr. Latamy doesn't think that this is possible, but he's like, okay, I'll go check my gun case. So he goes to check his gun case and he sees that his gun has recently been cleaned. And he thinks it's really odd because he recently went and he had used that gun recently when he went to go shoot it. I don't know how to word that right. He finds it odd because it was dirty when he put it in his gun case.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now it's clean all of a sudden.
Yeah. So he immediately is like, I have to go take this to the police, you know?
Yeah.
And the cops take a look at the gun and they can see right away that it's a caliber weapon, just like the one that would have been used to kill Greg. Yeah. So they call Mr. Latamy's son's friend, Ralph Welch, and they ask him if he can come in so that they can talk to him. And Ralph had actually been living with the Latamys. They kind of took him in as their own son because Ralph was living in a shack, like a very destitute little shack with his dad, and he had dropped out of school, and like,
oh wow,
there was newspaper in the windows. The Latamys were like, hey, come live with us and we'll make sure that, you know, you get everything that you need and you can go back to school.
Oh.
Yeah. He was living with them and he was friends with the Latimie's son, J.R. Latimie. This is J.R.
Oh, okay.
Or Junior, but a lot of people called him JR. And JR was described as a really good kid. He had a collection of Edgar Allan Poe books. He loved to read Edgar Allan Poe, which I thought was kind of cute.
Yeah, that's cute.
And he worked on his old Camaro in his spare time. His aspiration was to be a Marine, and he would visit his grandma all the time. And he would also, every Christmas, he would help with feeding the houseless community. So he was a really, like, good kid, very, like, loved by the community and his parents. JR and Ralph were kind of like brothers. They were close, but they didn't hang out all the time. They respected each other. And they were actually friends with two other boys called Billy Flynn and Pete Randall.
Oh.
And Pete was held back in high school because he was truant, and that caused a lot of issues. He was a bit of a troublemaker. It was said that his aspiration in life was to be a hitman.
Oh,
so, a bit of a
okay.
red flag. But he was described by his mother as a very loving kid. Every time he left the house, he would always hug his mom and his dad.
Aww.
So the fourth boy, Billy Flynn, he had a troubled childhood, and he was said to be the ringleader of the group. His dad was really angry and verbally abusive. When he was 12 years old, his mom caught his dad cheating on her, and so she was like, we're gonna move. They lived in California, and they moved to New Hampshire. So she basically just left Billy's dad to start a new life.
Okay.
Billy's mom said from that point on, he was a very angry child. Like, he would have outbursts all the time. She described him as like a volcano. Like, you could always tell that he was bothered by something, but nothing would happen until he completely exploded, and he would let it all out and just,
Oh, yeah.
His dad actually ended up passing away, and Billy's mom was the sole caretaker, and she worked several jobs to take care of him and his family. So he didn't have a whole lot of supervision, and you can't see juvenile records, so we don't know if he got in trouble with the law a lot, but he was described as being angry and very impulsive. The four of them were a pretty close-knit group: Ralph, Billy, Pete, and JR.
Oh, okay.
They all got the same hair going on, but they do look different.
Yeah.
They're just a couple of dorky teenage boys. Ralph was becoming really concerned with the rest of his friends because he kept hearing that they were involved in this murder.
Oh,
And
that's heavy.
Yeah, and according to his confession, he went in to speak to the police, and he said that Billy was going around school bragging about the fact that he killed Greg Smart.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so he confronted his friends, and he was like, did you really do it? Like, did you really kill somebody? And Billy was like, no, I didn't kill anybody. That's how I imagine his voice would be, because he's a teenage boy. But he was like, no, I didn't kill anybody. And then Ralph walked out of the room. The second that he left, he heard his friends say, oh, well, we know who's gonna be next. Yeah. And so Ralph walked back into the room, and he was like, what'd you say? Did you guys really kill somebody? And that's when they started telling him this whole story.
Oh my god.
They started talking about who was all there. They said that one of the boys, Pete, held Greg Smart, Pam's husband's head, as Billy shot him.
Oh my god.
And the cops were like, did they tell you anything else about it? And that's when Ralph was like, no, but they did say that they were going to get insurance money from Pam. And it's like, how does a 15-year-old know what insurance is? You know, maybe they do, but I didn't know what insurance was when I was 15, just saying. And the cops are like, okay, did she say why she wanted her husband dead? And that's when Ralph said that Greg liked the dog more than Pam, that Pam said he was worth more dead than he was alive. That's what the boys supposedly told Ralph.
Oh my god.
Yeah. According to the podcast Murder Made Me Famous, I'll link it below, but that's one of the sources that I used. When Billy and Pete killed Greg, they threw Halen, the dog, down the stairs to the basement, and when it thumped down the stairs, they laughed.
Oh.
Yeah. And another thing that I heard from this podcast was that when Greg's body was found, Pam kept referring to him as the body. She wasn't calling him my husband or Greg. I don't know.
I think that's weird.
I think it's a little weird, and I thought it was important to include, you know?
Yeah.
So the police are already suspicious of Pam, and Ralph's confession just added fuel to the fire, essentially.
Yeah.
So they start looking into the boys, and they can see that the boys don't really have a clean record by any means.
Yeah.
They didn't get into a whole lot of trouble, but like they did have little things like petty theft and stuff like that. But they were very admired by the community. Like, people really love these boys. boys. All 4 of them would go help with shoveling snow. They would help the elderly. Like, they were just good kids.
Wow.
Even their teachers said that they were great kids, you know? And with everything coming to the table, the police don't think it's too far-fetched that the kids have something to do with it, but they just don't know why. So they're like, we gotta figure out what's going on. What's the connection, you know?
Yeah.
Firstly, the boys go to Winnacunnet High School, which is where Pam works. 2 of the boys know Pam personally, which they didn't know yet. But it's Billy and JR. They know Pam personally. At Winnacunnet High School, all of the students have to go through a program called Project Self-Esteem, where it like helps kids with like drug problems and stuff like that. And Billy, JR, and Cecilia were a part of the program. And that's where Billy and JR met Pam. And when they met Pam, Billy leaned over to JR and whispered, "I think I'm in love," when he saw her.
Oh my god.
So police are looking into this again, and they find that Pam actually collected $140,000 from Greg's life insurance.
Oh wow. And that was a lot more back then in the 80s.
Oh yeah. And as a 22-year-old in 1989, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Even now, that's like,
even
me
now
got that much money, I would be like,
insane.
Yeah. Back then, it was a lot of money, and people were like, well, why did she collect the life insurance money that fast? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, but did those people consider funeral costs? The people that immediately judged her for that. Did they consider funeral costs? Did they consider that now Pam is living on 1 income rather than 2? Did they consider that she probably had to take work off because of the media frenzy? You know, it's like there's so many reasons why.
She still needs to exist.
Exactly. Why she might need that money. After finding this information, they arrest the boys on June 11th, 1989, because, like I said, Ralph confessed that they had something to do with it.
God.
But they're juveniles, so they don't release their names to the public because they're underage, so there's no way that they can release their names. Meanwhile, Pam sees that these killers have been caught, so she's calling around to see if anybody knows anything, because she's like I said, she was completely blocked out from the investigation.
Yeah.
You know, she's calling around trying to see if anybody knows anything. And some of the people that she's calling are the parents from the school. She calls Billy's mom. And that's how she finds out that it's these 3 boys, Pete, Billy, and JR, who have been arrested in connection to Greg Smart's murder.
Wow.
Bill Spencer goes to Pam's condo soon after all of this is coming to light. She opens the door just a crack, like this much. He's like, "They caught your husband's killer. Like, are you happy? Are you happy?" And she's like, "No, Bill." I think she says verbatim, "No, Bill, I can't comment on this. I really can't. I'm totally devastated." This was broadcast, and everybody thought it was so weird. Like, they were like, "Why is she not happy that the killer was caught?"
Oh.
And I was thinking about it, and I was like, I understand that narrative, and at the same time, I understand why she would be devastated, because it's kids that she knows, you know? Like,
yeah.
And they're kids. I want to be like, yay.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't know.
It's a hard one to say, and I think that I just feel like, how do you have an opinion on something like this if you've never been through it, you know?
Exactly. The police bring the boys in, and the boys won't say a word, but they're looking at Pam a lot more closely, because they're like, these boys went to Winnacunnet High School where you worked, so maybe there's a connection there.
Yeah.
Especially because of Greg's life insurance and how Ralph mentioned the $500 that the boys would get. The cops conclude that there's only one person that must know about this, and it's Cecilia Pierce, and they need to talk to her and figure out what she knows, you know?
Yeah.
So they decide to try and get more information from her. They have her come in, and she comes in with her mom, and they're like, "We know that you know something, and if you don't tell us, then we're gonna charge you as an accomplice." And on top of that, the commander of the police force is in there, and apparently he's yelling at her. He shouted at her, and he was like, "We're gonna charge you if you don't say anything." And her mom was there, and apparently she was like, "You can't talk to my kid like that." And the cops were like, "We're just trying to help her. Like, it would be in her best interest to confess if she knows something." And the mom was like, "You can't make her talk if she has nothing to say."
Yeah.
You know? And that's when Cecilia was like, "I have to go to driver's ed." She got up and she walked out of the room.
Oh, good for her.
So, yeah. But later that night, Cecilia's watching the news with her mom, and it says on the news that the cops are looking at a 4th suspect, Cecilia. So she finally decides that she wants to talk to the cops, and she leans over to her mom and she's like, "I'm gonna talk to the cops." And her mom was like, "Okay." According to Cecilia, her mom wasn't surprised, which I found found kind of interesting because I was like, if she went in with the cops earlier and she was like, you can't talk to my kid like that, and kind of defended her kid, it would seem to me that maybe her mom was like, clearly my child doesn't have anything to do with this.
That's what I was thinking.
Right. But then, yeah. But anyways, Cecilia goes in and she starts talking about everything that she knows. And she says that she considers Pam a big sister. She also reveals that 22-year-old Pam and 15-year-old Billy were having an affair.
Oh, no.
I mean, if you can even call it that. So they ask Cecilia how she knows about this alleged affair. And Cecilia says that she walked in on Pam and Billy. Yeah.
Ew.
I know. When I heard that part, it made me sick. I was like,
oh my god.
the cops are like, what the actual... If this is true, Pam never said a word about it. Which makes sense if she's ashamed. But at the same time, it's like you should tell the cops that, you know?
Yeah.
This really starts to paint a picture for the police because Cecilia is saying that this 22-year-old that works at her high school is having an affair with a child that goes to that school.
Yeah.
And that child has now been charged with the murder of her husband.
Yeah. Jesus.
So the cops are immediately like, okay.
Yeah, something's going on here.
Something a little strange is going on here.
Yeah.
And the cops are thinking, if this is true, it's pretty damning evidence.
Yeah.
So the cops already know that Pam knows the boys, but they're trying to see if there was any other connection other than the self-esteem project that they were all in.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing their research and they find that the Florida Department of Citrus was having an orange juice commercial contest.
Mm-hmm.
And they obviously lived in New Hampshire, but this contest was sent to various high school media centers. Winnacunnet High School got the contest invitation. There were a bunch of prizes included, like the top prize was a trip to Disney World. And so Pam got the kids involved because she was like, this would be fun for them to win. She needed to have it filmed and she decided to ask Billy to film it. That's when Billy and Cecilia got really involved in this project. And so it was the three of them. It was Pam, Billy, and Cecilia. And at first, that's all it was filming the commercial. They had a lot of fun doing it. And then Cecilia says that it slowly turned into an excuse to hang out outside of school grounds, which is so weird.
Like for Pam to hang out with Billy outside of school.
Right.
That's weird.
And around this time, Pam was going through a lot of hardships in her own relationship. In fact, Greg had cheated on her.
Oh.
Yeah, and on top of that, he was going out with his friends all the time, so he was gone a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So she, I think, in contrast to that, decided to hang out with these kids more because maybe it made her feel more validated. I'm not really sure. From there, Pam, Billy, and Cecilia began hanging out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And police are like, okay, but why would Billy want to kill her husband? Like, obviously there's this alleged affair, but was it because he was jealous or was it because Pam told him to, you know?
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah.
So they want to see if they can get more information. They use Cecilia since she's their main informant, and they have Cecilia call Pam to see if Pam will confess to anything over the phone.
Oh my god.
And so they're listening to this phone call, and Pam doesn't say a word. One of the questions they have Cecilia ask is, why wouldn't you just get a divorce from Greg rather than getting him killed?
Oh my god.
Pam is like, why would you say that, Cecilia? That's so weird. Pam just isn't saying anything that incriminates her at all.
Yeah.
So the cops are like, okay, well, that didn't work. So after continuous efforts, police eventually decide to have Cecilia wired, which is so weird because Cecilia is a 15-year-old girl and you're gonna send her in to talk to a potential murderer
I know.
with a wire?
Do your own work.
Yeah. On July 12th, almost a month exactly after the boys were arrested, they sent Cecilia into Winnacunnet High School, all wired up to speak to Pam. And if this case isn't wild and crazy enough, this is where it gets even weirder. Derry police have a really crappy recording device. There's two parts of it. The part that they have in the car and the part that they have on Cecilia's body. The part they have in the car stops working completely. completely. So all they can do is use the equipment that's on Cecilia's body as she's speaking to Pam. And this audio sounds completely horrible. Later, they can't use it at all. Like, they can use bits and pieces, but they can't really use it because it's just, the quality is so bad.
Wow.
But anyways, this is part of what they catch on the audio between Pam and Cecilia. I'm going to go ahead and play it for you guys.
Okay.
And there's subtitles if you need to look at it.
Okay.
Because if there is, then they can really bag them, you know? But that's the thing. So I don't know, you know, I mean, I wish this wasn't the circumstances. You know, I hate the fact that you have to be interested. I hate the fact that you're scared. I hate the fact that you're probably going to have to take a lie detector test. But I don't know what to tell you. If I thought if you told the truth it was going to do you any good, that'd be one thing. But it's not. If you tell the truth, you cannot change what you know, you know? You can't. And if you tell the truth, you are probably going to be arrested. And if even if you're not arrested, you're going to have to go and you're going to have to send Bill, you're going to have to send me, you're going to have to send JR, you're going to have to send me to the slammer for the rest of our entire life. And unfortunately, that's the situation.
And unfortunately, that's the situation that you're in.
Whoa, that sounds super sketchy. Pam, I was rooting for you.
I know. So it seems to police after this recording that Pam knows more than she's letting on. And not only that, they're considering the fact that she didn't say anything when they had Cecilia call her just a few days earlier. And now she's saying all of this.
Yeah.
But I would like to mention that during this time, Pam had actually lawyered up.
Oh.
And her lawyers had told her that Cecilia is likely going to be wired at any point during you speaking to her. So be aware of that.
Oh.
Pam claims that Cecilia kept coming to her over and over and over again, saying things like, oh, I heard they found the knife. I heard they found this. I heard they found that. So Pam used this opportunity, according to her, to try and start her own little investigation.
Oh.
So she was acting as if she was implicated in the murder so she could get more information from Cecilia. That's her explanation, which I'm like,
that doesn't really make sense to me.
I know. Me either. August 1st, 1991, the police decide that they have enough evidence to charge Pam. So they walk into Pam's office at Winnacunnet High School. The homicide detective's name is Detective Pelletier. He looks at her and he's like, Pam, we have good news and we have bad news. The good news is we've pretty much solved your husband's murder. The bad news is you're under arrest. Please stand up. So they arrest her. And this starts an entire media uproar. The second that they arrest Pam and take her out of the building, there's somebody standing outside taking pictures of her as she's being arrested. From this point on, the media just goes wild. 2 weeks after she's arrested, Pam is indicted on charges of accomplice to first-degree murder.
Oh my god.
And suddenly, this whole entire case is not about Greg anymore. I think it's really important to remember the victim throughout the story. Throughout this story, Greg is completely forgotten time and time again, which I think is really unfair. It's all about Pam. She's being called the Black Widow Killer. There's pictures of her, and it seems like her eyes are like mostly black, and people are like, she's so cold-hearted, she's a sociopath. There's talk of the affair between her and the 15-year-old boy. There's newspapers saying that she bribed the students to kill her husband. The news is going crazy. Rumor after rumor. Obviously, parts of it are true, but a lot of it is fabricated. If you remember, they did the exact same thing when Greg first got found. They were like, Greg is a drug dealer. He's got ties to the mafia. Like,
yeah.
It's like from the beginning, the media was crazy. So I'm not surprised that they went this route, you know? Completely out of nowhere, one of the news outlets receives a picture of Pam. It's her posing in a white bikini. That adds to the media uproar. According to reports, this picture was included in a stack of pictures that needed to be developed, and Pam gave them to Billy to develop, and she was like, keep what you want.
What?
So at this point, she's just looking worse and worse, you know?
God.
The police are thinking Cecilia said that Pam had this affair, and that was true. So if Cecilia said that she also had her husband killed, that must also be true. Which is like, why are you relying on a 15-year-old's confession? Up to this point, there is no physical evidence that puts Pam at the scene of the crime. The general bias of the community and the media outlets is that a teacher, Pam, seduced a student, Billy, then convinced him to kill her husband. From that point, it goes from local news to national news. Like, people are talking about this all over the place. It just completely blows up. The case eventually goes to trial, and Paul Maggiato was the lead prosecutor in this case. This is him. Got a little mustache.
Oh, okay.
And he was referred to as the Bulldog, and I think why was because he was short and aggressive, but I don't know that for sure, but that's the vibe that he gives me, so that's what I went with. He turned his attention to the boys immediately. They weren't admitting to anything. They weren't saying a word, if you remember. So Maggiato was like, okay, then we'll charge you as adults. And then you'll talk, right?
Oh.
So that got the boys talking.
Ooh.
And I just want to mention that the boys were in cells that were directly next to each other, which is usually...
so they had this whole time to conspire.
Yeah, which is normally advised against because, like you said, it gives the boys to conspire and an opportunity to get their story straight.
Yeah.
You know? But let's not forget, there literally was no physical proof, you know?
This is just something a 15-year-old said that was true.
Right. The prosecution, because of this, they had to rely on a jury and the testimony of the boys and the recordings from when Cecilia spoke to Pam when she had the wire on.
Mm-hmm.
The recordings were very damning, as you heard, you know?
Yeah.
Like I said, Pam would explain that the reason why she said those things was because she was completely cut out of the investigation. She had no idea what was going on in the case, and so she felt like she had to conduct an investigation of her own. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't sound great on her part.
No, it just sounds sketchy. That alone doesn't sound sketchy to me, but the part where she was like, I had to act like I had something to do with the murder so that I could get more information, that part sounds sketchy to me. Because I think if I was in her position, I would probably hold my own investigation if nobody was letting me in on the police investigation.
Yeah, she's 22 years old. She either flat out lied and said that she had nothing to do with it and she pretended, or she actually did make a very illogical decision in implicating herself in a murder without actually thinking of the repercussions.
That's
because
true.
she's not even, her brain isn't even fully developed yet.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it makes sense that maybe she would make a really stupid decision to try and get more information.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's true. That's a really good point.
Police have the basic story of what happened from Cecilia. Billy Flynn and Pam were having an affair, and she convinced him to kill her husband.
And Pam never denied the affair?
No.
Oh, okay.
Then after she convinced Billy to kill her husband, Greg got killed, but the cops need more information, you know? Like, they know at this point that they want to go in the direction of pointing the finger at Pam.
It's the easiest answer.
Yeah. And not so surprisingly, after the prosecution is like, okay, we're going to charge you as an adult, the boys finally talk, and all of them point the finger at Pam. They say that she planned it all. Once Maggiato and the police feel like they have the whole story from the boys, they offer them a plea bargain. The plea bargain is, hey, we're still going to charge you as an adult, but you guys will get a way lesser sentence. You just have to say that Pam did it, basically. So Pam at this point was already convicted by the media. Throughout the entire media frenzy, the boys are painted as these innocent little boys that were seduced by the teacher, right?
Yeah.
Automatically, Pam is guilty. Already before the trial even starts, Pam is guilty. Pam is the one that did this. And on top of that, they were relying on a jury, and the jury was not sequestered. So the jury was being exposed to the media frenzy the entire time. Mm-hmm. They were not being like blocked out from the media. They were allowed to watch the news. They were allowed to read the newspapers.
Wow.
So they were seeing the entire time that Pam is this crazy, sexy teacher, you know?
Yeah.
Who seduced her students into killing her husband.
Yeah.
Constantly, the media was reiterating that Pam was a cold-hearted, dead-eyed woman who didn't cry when she was in interviews, who used sex to get her husband killed. Despite that, her defense team did the best that they could. Like, simultaneously, the prosecution did the best that they could. Lawyers on both sides were extremely professional and had a lot of experience. Like, they were both very seasoned. So it was really an intense battle between the two of them.
Yeah.
The prosecution portrayed Pamela Smart as the cold-blooded killer. They claimed that Smart seduced Flynn Flynn to get him to murder her husband so that she can avoid an expensive divorce and get a $140,000 life insurance policy.
Ooh. Like, of all the people that she could have murder her husband, a freaking high school kid?
Exactly.
That just doesn't really make sense to me. If you already thought about things like that, like the life insurance and stuff, I just don't understand why you would get a kid to do it.
That's exactly how I felt too when I was doing the research on this case. Like, the entire time I was just like, but why would you have a kid do it?
Yeah.
So Cecilia testified at the trial, and she said that Pam and Billy were originally just friends. And Cecilia noticed a change when they started hanging out off of school grounds. And one day Pam was like, I'm in love with Billy.
Oh, she told Cecilia that?
Yeah. Cecilia was like, oh, okay.
Oh.
Remember, Cecilia said that she had walked in on Pam and Billy.
Mm-hmm.
That was true. So Pam was hanging out with Cecilia one night, and Cecilia was like, hey, can I sleep over? And she was like, yeah, sure. And Billy was there.
Ooh.
And Billy was like, can I sleep over? And Pam was like, yeah, sure. I know. This whole part makes me cringe so hard because it's so gross. But she's like, yeah, you can sleep over. And so they were all hanging out and they got a bunch of movies to watch. And prior to this, when they were making the orange juice commercial, one day Pam and Cecilia were over at Billy's house for the commercial, and Billy kissed Pam. And Pam was taken aback by it, and she actually tried to break it off with him.
Ooh.
But anyways, they all had been hanging out. They got a bunch of movies to watch. And one of the movies that they decided to watch when they all slept over at Pam's house was called 9.5 Weeks. And it was this, during the time, very salacious film. Like, it was very inappropriate for the time. Like, it has like one sex scene, but it's very like, romancy.
Uh-huh.
The romance sexy scene came on, and Pam asked Cecilia to take Halen for a walk so that she could be alone with Billy.
Ew.
Yeah. And she took Billy upstairs, and you know what happened.
Ew.
I know. And they were up there for 2 hours.
Ew.
And Cecilia finally went upstairs, and she was like, are you guys like dressed? Can you come down here? And that's when she walked in on them.
Oh my god. That's so weird. Pam, that's disgusting.
I know. Every time I hear that, it makes me literally nauseous. Like,
Ew.
I'm just like, what?
What is wrong with her?
I know. In Pam's testimony, she acknowledged that she had what she termed an affair with the underage boy. She never denied that. You know, people say that she wanted to get him killed because she only knew him for a year, but it's like they were dating for a while, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, they'd been dating longer than they were married.
Right. And before she had this affair, Greg was actually going out with his friends a lot, like I said, and he ended up cheating on her. And so her explanation of having an affair with a child was that she was very vulnerable and Billy was always complimenting her and stuff, and it made her feel less alone during that time, which I'm like, I don't know, you know. And people always say that Greg changed his look, so Pam didn't like that and she had him murdered. But I'm like, they literally got married after he already changed his look, so I don't think that's very accurate. She says that Greg has an affair, and so she's feeling really vulnerable and insecure. And Billy is constantly giving her attention and telling her how pretty she is and making advances on her. They're working on the video, and one day he kissed her, like I said. They didn't talk about it, but she tried to break it off with him several times, and that happened before they ended up doing it. This is not an excuse for her behavior. I just think it's important to include.
Yeah.
And this is a clip of her testimony.
What was Billy Flynn's reactions on times when you tell him things you told us earlier about being wrong and wanting having to break it off?
He told me that he was going to kill himself.
What tone of voice? That's what I mean by reactions.
He would usually cry.
Cry easily?
Did he cry easily?
Or did he cry often?
Often? No, not often. Probably, I've seen him cry probably 4 times.
Can you tell us about one of them?
There was one time when we were in my car, and I had told him that I didn't want to have a relationship with him anymore, and he started crying, and he said that he couldn't live without me.
She claimed that the murder of her husband was solely the doing of Billy and his friends. She thinks that the reason why he killed Greg was a reaction to her breaking up with him. Because she said that she wanted to repair her marriage with Greg. She even said that she told Greg about the weird affair with the child, and Greg forgave her. And they were planning on repairing their relationship after that. She kept telling Billy over and over again that she wanted to be with Greg, and Billy just didn't want to hear it. And he would constantly be like, how can you love two people at once? And how can you choose him over me? And da-da-da-da-da. They were planning on moving forward, her and Greg, and she insisted that she didn't participate in the murder of her husband, you know? She kept saying over and over again that she didn't have any knowledge of it. A lot of people say that she looks really confident in her testimony. As you saw before, she does look pretty confident. To me, she seems angry a little bit, and I think if she's innocent, like, I can understand why she would be angry. But Billy Flynn, he claimed that he had fallen in love with Pam when he first saw her, that she used that to her benefit.
To get him to kill her husband.
Right. And he and the boys went into full detail, accounting that Pam had told them to avoid her couch because she didn't want to get blood on it, and to put the dog downstairs so the dog wouldn't be traumatized, not to use a knife because it would cause a mess. The boys' story is that they drove over there. JR waited in the car with this other boy, Fowler, who I couldn't get a whole bunch of information on, but he was the driver. I guess maybe it was his car.
Oh, okay. Just a friend of the kids.
Yeah. Billy and Pete went in. They trashed the place. They threw the dog down the stairs.
That's so sad.
I know. And they waited for Greg to get home. And once Greg came home, they attacked him and got him down on his knees. They said that Pam told them that she had a meeting that day, so she wouldn't be home. But she told them what time Greg would be home so that they would be there. But according to the police documents and what they had found, the boys had been there for a really long time. They were there for hours before Greg got home.
Oh, wow.
And they just waited. Like I said, they wrestled him down to his knees, and Pete held a knife up to Greg's neck, and then Pete was like, I can't do it, Billy, I can't do it. And that's when Billy held a pillow up to Greg's head to muffle the sound, and he pulled the gun out of his jacket and shot Greg. Right before he pulled the trigger, he said, God, forgive me. And here's a clip of Billy's testimony.
He said, God, forgive me. What happened?
I pulled the trigger.
What was the plan after the murder of Gregory Smart between you and the defendant?
Well, Pam was going to get the insurance money, and she was going to buy a condo closer to me. So we could be together.
And what did you know about the insurance money?
She said she couldn't believe it, that there was 2 insurance policies, one for $90, one for $50, so it was $140,000.
Yeah. So if you notice at the beginning of that clip, Billy is crying. Mm-hmm. And he does that a lot. Like when Pam was breaking up with him, she says that he cries a lot. It seems to be a part of his personality. Maybe he's just sensitive, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it was constantly stated by the prosecution that Billy was a child, which he was, and that he was very impressionable. And I was thinking about this, and people say over and over again that Billy was an incredibly impressionable person, that he was coaxed by Pam. If that's the case, then could he be coaxed or persuaded to testify against Pam? Could he be persuaded to maybe even confess to a crime he didn't even commit? You know? Before the trial, Pam didn't even think that Billy had anything to do with it. So the idea of him being innocent and just confessing to a crime he didn't even commit, like, it would make sense, you know? Yeah. I don't think that it's too far-fetched at all.
No.
Because there's no physical evidence that ties Pam or any of the boys to the crime scene, you know?
Yeah.
It's also not completely out of the ordinary for police to assist in the fabrication of a confession. It's happened time and time again. Mm-hmm. It could have happened in this case, and it's also happened in cases like Making a Murderer on Netflix. Mm-hmm. This is literally how some cops are trained to get confessions.
Yeah, like, straight up.
So it's not completely out of the ordinary to assume that maybe that's what happened here.
Yeah.
So this was a 14-day trial, which is pretty short compared to the
Yeah.
normal trial.
Yeah.
And with all the evidence that had been presented, the prosecution asked the jury for 3 guilty verdicts. And after a 13-and-a-half-hour deliberation, that's exactly what the jury came back with.
Wow.
3 guilty verdicts for Pam, Billy, and Pete. Judge Gray immediately sentenced Pam to life without parole on the count of accomplice to first-degree murder. Another hearing would see her sentenced to 2 other counts: conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and witness tampering.
Wow.
Fowler, the boy that was in the car with JR,
Oh, yeah.
he claims that he was not aware of any murder and had just gone along for the ride. But his failure to report the attempt and his cleaning of the murder weapon cost him 30 years in a separate prosecution.
Wow.
Billy and Pete were certified as adults, and for that they received 40 years with possibility of parole. JR got 30 years with the possibility of parole.
Wow.
And all 3 boys have now been released.
Wow.
Billy and Pete served 25 plus years, even though their sentences were 40 years. And JR was released 15 years after Greg Smart's death.
Wow.
And Pam is still in prison.
Wow.
Yeah, so she's tried over and over and over again to get her sentencing changed. It's been denied. Every time she's tried to get any kind of parole, it's been denied. At this point, it's up to the governor, and the governor has also denied it. And the reason why is because people say until she admits her guilt in having to do with Greg Smart's murder, they're not gonna give her anything.
They're not gonna budge.
But she won't admit that she had anything to do with Greg Smart's murder because she claims that she's innocent. You know, I was thinking about this and I was like, so why would she hold on to her innocence? Like, if she just confessed, even if she didn't do it, that would give her freedom.
Yeah.
You know, she even said that she would rather have the death penalty than be given this life without parole sentence.
Wow.
And even after everything that's happened to her in prison, she still won't admit any kind of guilt. She's been sexually assaulted by a correctional officer. She's been beaten so badly by inmates that she had to have plastic surgery. Through everything, she still won't admit her guilt because she doesn't think that she's guilty.
Wow.
At least of conspiring to have her husband killed. And here's a clip of her now.
It's been 29 years. Is it time to just admit you did it and say you're sorry?
Again, I don't think so, because I don't think that a person should admit to a crime they didn't commit.
Would it be worth it to admit it, even if it would just help get you a hearing?
To me, no. I wouldn't be able to reconcile that and live with myself. You know, I'm saying this is my fault.
What about those people who say that's not enough, though?
I don't know if anything I ever do is going to be enough.
And you're never going to say it. You're never going to say, I told them to kill my husband.
No.
So several movies have been made about this case, including a movie called To Die For, starring Nicole Kidman, where Pam is portrayed as this like ditzy weather girl. Pam hates these movies because she thinks that it paints a false narrative, even though they get her famous. And speaking of narrative, these 2 things are constantly left out of the narrative of the Pamela Smart case. Number 1, that she has been and still is terribly remorseful about her affair with Billy Flynn. She constantly talks about if she had just not had the affair, then her husband would still be alive today. Like, she says that a lot. And number 2, that each of Billy's friends in their testimonies, they said that Billy told them to do these things, wait in the car or go in with him and kill Greg. It's because Billy told them to. And you can look through the transcripts of the trial and it says it over and over and over again that Billy told them to. So I think that's important to know.
Yeah.
And with everything, it's really hard for me to say who's guilty, if anyone is. The only thing I can say for sure is that Pam is a predator and Billy should have never been roped into this. He didn't ask to be preyed upon. I think that that is a fact. He was only 15 years old. Do I think that it's possible he killed Greg? Absolutely. I think that, you know, it wouldn't be the first time that a teenage boy has killed people. Do I think that it's possible that Pam planned all of this? Sure. Do I think that maybe neither of them are guilty and Pam just preyed upon him and that's all that happened? Yeah. Diane Diamond is a reporter who has been following this case for a really long time, like since the beginning. And she was on this documentary where I got a lot of the information. It's called Pamela Smart, An American Murder Mystery. I'll go ahead and link that below in all of my other sources, but here's a clip of Diane Diamond.
I saw Pam just last week went up to Bedford State Prison, and she told me, she said, I'm a smart person. She's working on her 3rd master's degree right now in prison.
She's got a lot of time on her hands.
She's pretty busy in prison, but she said, I'm a smart woman. Would a smart person ask a 15, 16-year-old to go kill her husband with his friends?
They say,
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, why would such a smart person like Pam ask a 15-year-old to kill her husband?
Yeah.
I think that if it was premeditated, maybe it wouldn't be as messy.
Yeah, I think she would have hired an adult.
Right. But yeah, and there's so much information about this case. I think it's really easy to fall on one side of two narratives. I think that if you're going to look into the case, you should definitely do your research. I did my best to stay as neutral as possible while researching and presenting everything, rather than just only giving bits and pieces that fit my own narrative.
Yeah.
But I believe that Pam will always search for answers. She has always said that Billy is the key to her freedom. And the reason why is because she believes that if he told the truth, or her version of the truth, that he would go back to prison because of his plea bargain. So she thinks that, until he admits his own guilt or admits the truth, like, she'll always be there. And ultimately, there's no way for us to know the truth of what happened on May 1st, 1990. Tom Nichols is a former police officer and private investigator. He's constantly trying to dig up new clues. He is doing all of this pro bono because he's always believed that she's innocent.
That Pam is innocent?
Yeah, from the beginning. Greg Smart was lost in the midst of all of this media chaos, His family believes that Pamela Smart is where she belongs. Ultimately, I don't think that there is any way to bring justice to this case, because no matter how many people go to prison, you can't bring Greg back. And Greg has already been done such a disservice by being lost in all of this. It shouldn't be the Pamela Smart case.
No.
It should be the Greg Smart case. It just feels really unfair. I would advise you to do your own research. That is my best advice. But yeah, that is the end of the case. And I hope that even though it was wild and really depressing, I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And
good job, dude. That was crazy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
That was a lot.
It's a wild and very depressing story, but I think it is a story that deserves to be heard.
Yeah.
It's a wild one.
Wow. It's crazy because none of us know ultimately what happened. And I feel the same. I believe that Pam was guilty of having an inappropriate relationship with a child. I think that versus killing someone, those are two completely different crimes. And I think that she shouldn't be paying for something that she didn't do if she didn't do it.
Yeah. I feel like when it comes to this case, the media is the biggest issue.
Yeah. They ran with a story. They took a story, they decided to side, and they ran with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. And if you have any case suggestions, please leave them below in the comments, because over and over and over again, I'm like, I don't know what people want to hear,
Yeah. Tell us what you want to hear.
So we talked about it before, but John Wayne Gacy, if you really want to hear that story, I guess I will talk about it for you. Thank you for watching.
Tuning in.
Don't forget to subscribe and give us a little like.
Share it. Love it.
Bye.
Okay, that's good.
That's good.